Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind, and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into one of the most delicate frontiers of science, the mystery of quantum consciousness, where the language of physics begins to whisper about the nature of the mind itself. Here, at the edge of thought and matter, we'll explore the idea that your awareness, this gentle spark behind your eyes, might not just observe the universe, but help shape it, moment by moment, from waves of possibility into reality. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little corner of space and time. Now feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey together. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. Every night as you drift towards sleep, something quietly astonishing happens. The chatter of your waking mind softens. Thoughts that once felt solid begin to dissolve into dreams, into fragments of images and sounds. And yet, even as your body falls into stillness, there is something, a watcher, an awareness that continues to linger. What is that? Where does that quiet sense of I come from? Science can describe the neurons that flicker when you see light, or the chemicals that dance when you feel love, but it has yet to explain the simple miracle of experience itself, the feeling of being here, right now, aware that you exist. This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. The question of how electrical signals and molecules inside your head could ever produce the taste of chocolate, the sound of rain, or the ache of memory. The easier problems are mechanical, how neurons communicate, how the brain processes data. But the hard problem asks why all that activity feels like anything from the inside. You could imagine a machine built from circuits and code that behaves exactly like you, laughing, crying, even saying, "I feel." Yet inside, there might be only silence. So why isn't your own mind silent? Why does matter, at some point, awaken? Some believe consciousness is simply what happens when enough complexity emerges, that your mind is an elaborate pattern of information, no more mysterious than a flame flickering in wind. Others feel that explanation leaves something missing, like describing a symphony only in terms of air pressure and vibration. There is melody, emotion, presence, something not fully captured by equations. And so some scientists have turned their gaze not upward into the stars, but inward into the smaller scales of reality, into the strange world of quantum mechanics, where the very rules of existence shimmer with uncertainty. Quantum physics tells us that everything, the atoms in your skin, the light that warms your face, the neurons that fire when you remember your favourite song, exist in a haze of possibilities. Particles can be in many states at once, like a coin spinning endlessly between heads and tails, until something, an observation, a measurement, an act of awareness, makes the possibilities collapse into one outcome. In that moment of collapse, potential becomes reality. And some have wondered, could consciousness itself be part of that process? Could the act of awareness be more than a product of physics? Could it be a participant in it? Inside your brain, there are structures far smaller than cells, tiny hollow tubes called microtubules. They help shape your neurons and guide the flow of materials inside them. But according to a fascinating and controversial idea proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, these microtubules might be doing something much more extraordinary. They might be tiny quantum instruments, maintaining delicate patterns of possibility, superpositions of electrical states within the warmth of the living brain. And when those patterns collapse, they might produce what we call conscious moments, the flicker of awareness that feels like you. At first glance, it sounds impossible. Quantum states are fragile. They collapse at the slightest disturbance. A warm, wet brain seems like the last place they could survive. Yet nature, time and again, has proven cleverer than our assumptions. In photosynthesis, plants use quantum coherence, the ability to explore many energy pathways at once, to harvest sunlight with near-perfect efficiency. Birds appear to navigate vast migrations by detecting quantum signals from Earth's magnetic field. Even your sense of smell may depend on quantum tunneling, particles slipping through barriers they shouldn't cross. If quantum effects can thrive in these living systems, perhaps the brain too has learned the trick. Imagine for a moment that within you, in the tiny lattice of your neurons, a hidden rhythm hums, a quantum pulse that flickers faster than any heartbeat. Each instant of awareness could be like a small wave collapsing into form, then fading, then rising again. A continual conversation between the possible and the real. Your thoughts might not just be chemical sparks, but quantum choices. Small acts of creation unfolding every fraction of a second. In this view, consciousness is not trapped in the skull. It is a participant in the universe's ongoing act of becoming. The idea is daring, and it's still a hypothesis, one that invites both curiosity and caution. Many neuroscientists remain skeptical, pointing out that the evidence is incomplete, and yet something in it speaks to a deeper intuition that mind and matter are not separate, but entwined, that perhaps the universe, through you, is learning to see itself. So tonight, as we drift deeper into this question, let's hold it gently. What if the feeling of being alive, of thinking, dreaming, wondering, is not an illusion born of neurons, but a reflection of the quantum nature of reality? What if every thought you have is part of the same great wave that ripples through stars and atoms alike? In that case, consciousness would not just be in you, it would be everywhere, waiting, watching, listening through the quiet hum of existence. And as you take a slow breath now and let your eyes grow heavy, remember, we're only beginning this exploration. The journey ahead will take us from the flicker of neurons to the fabric of space-time itself, from the heartbeat of the brain to the deep pulse of the cosmos, and somewhere between the two, perhaps, we'll find the truth of what it means to be aware. Imagine for a moment the landscape inside your own head. Billions of neurons stretch like ancient trees across a forest of thought. Each one reaches toward thousands of others, sending tiny pulses of electricity that jump across gaps, measured in thousandths of a millimeter. If you could shrink down to walk among them, you'd see a flickering city of light, little bursts flashing on and off in intricate rhythms, like fireflies signaling in the night. This is the visible language of your brain, the part science has mapped and measured. But beneath that visible dance, many researchers believe there might be another layer, a quieter rhythm, far smaller and more elusive, a quantum whisper beneath the electrical storm. For most of modern neuroscience, the brain has been treated as a kind of classical machine. Information flows in circuits, signals travel down axons like messages through a web of cables. Memories form as patterns of strengthened connections, and thoughts emerge from networks firing together in harmony. It is an elegant picture, and for many questions it works beautifully. But still, the deeper question remains unanswered. How do these physical patterns of firing give rise to experience itself? How does the cold language of electricity become the warmth of feeling? When physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff first joined forces in the 1990s, they believed the answer might not lie in the neurons themselves, but within their scaffolding, in tiny cylindrical filaments called microtubules. Each neuron contains thousands of these hollow tubes, arranged like delicate architectural beams supporting the cell's shape. But their arrangement is more than structural. The patterns along their surfaces shift in precise ways, and Hameroff proposed that they might serve as a kind of computational grid inside every neuron, smaller, faster, and more complex than the network of neurons themselves. Penrose added something extraordinary to the idea. He suggested that within these microtubules, matter could exist in a state of quantum superposition, not one thing or another, but many possibilities overlapping, waiting to be chosen. At unimaginably small scales, these possibilities could interact in ways that classical physics cannot describe. Each collapse of the quantum wave, each shift from possibility to actuality, could correspond to a moment of conscious awareness, a flicker of experience, a pulse of now. According to their model, the brain might not just process information, it might perform tiny quantum computations that give rise to awareness itself. To picture this, imagine a grand piano inside your mind, but invisible, and instead of strings and hammers, its notes are made of quantum vibrations. Every time these vibrations line up in harmony, a thought takes form. When they drift out of sync, awareness dims just slightly. The entire experience of being you could be a symphony made from these microscopic harmonies, orchestrated by physics itself. That's why they called the theory orchestrated objective reduction, or simply ORCOR, the orchestration of the moment when quantum potential reduces to physical reality. At first, many scientists dismissed the idea. They argued that the brain was far too warm and noisy for such fragile quantum effects to survive. Quantum states usually require deep cold, close to absolute zero, to stay coherent, that is, to keep all their possibilities intertwined without collapsing. In the brain, with its constant chemical chatter and heat, any quantum state should fall apart almost instantly. Penrose and Hameroff replied with a kind of quiet defiance. Perhaps nature has already solved that problem in ways we don't yet understand. In recent decades, the evidence has become less easy to ignore. In plants, researchers discovered that the energy from sunlight moves through molecules in a shimmering wave of quantum coherence, exploring all possible paths at once before finding the most efficient one. In birds, quantum entanglement helps them sense Earth's magnetic field and navigate thousands of miles without a map. Even our noses, it seems, may rely on electrons tunneling through odor molecules, a quantum trick that allows us to distinguish scents with astonishing precision. Nature, it turns out, has been using quantum mechanics all along, in warm, wet environments not so different from our own bodies. And then came the studies of the microtubules themselves. Scientists at the University of Alberta shined gentle light through purified microtubules and found traces of coherence lasting far longer than expected. Tiny flickers of organised quantum activity persisting for billionths of a second, which, in quantum terms, is a small eternity. Later, at the University of Central Florida, researchers measured oscillations that lasted up to nearly a full second, long enough, at least in theory, to influence the activity of neurons. These findings are still debated, but they opened a window to the possibility that quantum life could exist inside our thoughts. Even more intriguing were discoveries about anesthesia, the very process that turns consciousness off. At Wellesley College, researchers noticed that anesthetic molecules bind directly to microtubules, disrupting their internal vibrations. When they gave animals drugs that stabilize microtubules instead, those animals took longer to fall unconscious. The implication was subtle but profound. Awareness might fade not because neurons stop firing, but because their inner quantum music falls out of tune. If that's true, then consciousness could have a kind of physical fingerprint, not one we can see, but one we could measure as patterns of coherence and collapse, like the rhythm of breathing or the pulse of a heartbeat. When those patterns disappear, awareness vanishes. When they return, we awaken. Consciousness, in that view, is not a static thing, but a rhythm, arising and dissolving hundreds of times each second, like frames in a film that together create the illusion of continuity. This idea reframes the familiar in a tender way. Every time you blink, take a breath, or drift into a daydream, your awareness flickers, momentarily quiet, then reborn. Each conscious moment might be a tiny quantum decision, a choice made by the universe itself through you. And maybe that's what being alive really means. Not an unbroken stream, but a gentle pulse of creation, over and over, endlessly. Of course, these are still questions, not certainties, but whether or not microtubules truly hum with quantum song, the search for that song has already changed how we see ourselves. It reminds us that consciousness is not just a problem to solve, it's an invitation to wonder. The deeper we look into the machinery of the brain, the more it begins to resemble the universe itself, full of mystery, shimmering with possibility, and somehow aware that it exists. When we speak of quantum physics, it's easy to imagine a world utterly removed from life, an invisible realm buried inside atoms, far too small and too fragile to have anything to do with something as vivid as a sunrise or a heartbeat. But as science has gently peeled back the layers of reality, a quiet revelation has emerged. Nature has been fluent in the quantum language all along. Every blade of grass, every migrating bird, even the cells in your body appear to know how to borrow a little of that uncertainty, to dance in the space between possibility and actuality. Let's begin with sunlight, the simplest and most ancient gift to life. When a photon, a single particle of light, lands on a leaf, it begins a journey through the plant's interior. The plant must move that energy quickly, with almost perfect efficiency before it fades away. For years, scientists assumed this process was purely mechanical, little packets of energy hopping from molecule to molecule. But in the early 2000s, researchers studying photosynthesis discovered something astonishing. The energy wasn't hopping at all. It was flowing like a wave, simultaneously exploring all the possible paths it could take. And only after trying them all did it settle on the most efficient route. That shimmering, many paths at once behaviour is a hallmark of quantum coherence. Somehow, deep inside every green leaf, nature had found a way to keep quantum possibilities alive in the warmth of daylight. From there, scientists began to look for other examples. They turned their attention to birds, tiny travellers who can find their way across continents with a precision that still humbles our instruments. For decades we thought they followed the stars or sensed the pull of the magnetic field in some classical way. But experiments with robins and other migratory birds suggested a more intricate story. Within their eyes are molecules called cryptochromes that appear to act like little quantum compasses. When sunlight excites them, they create pairs of electrons whose spins become linked, or entangled. These entangled partners, even as they drift apart, remain connected through invisible quantum ties. As Earth's magnetic field changes the orientation of those spins, the bird perceives subtle variations in brightness, a ghostly pattern that paints the magnetic landscape directly onto its vision. In other words, a robin's awareness of direction might literally be a product of quantum entanglement happening inside its eyes. It's as though nature hid the mathematics of the universe within the gaze of something as ordinary as a bird. And then there's smell, that quiet sense we rarely think about. It might not seem like a likely place for quantum strangeness, yet some chemists believe that the way you distinguish one fragrance from another depends on electrons tunneling through barriers they shouldn't be able to cross. Each scent molecule, they propose, vibrates at a unique frequency, like a faint musical note. When an electron leaps across it, it can hear that note, translating vibration into smell. So the aroma of rain on dry soil, or the sweetness of bread baking, may begin with a tiny quantum dance inside your nose. The universe, it seems, does not always keep its mysteries locked away in laboratories. Sometimes it tucks them into our senses. All of this has changed how we think about what's possible in warm, living systems. For much of the 20th century, scientists assumed that quantum effects could only survive in extreme cold, protected from noise and heat. But life, in its gentle insistence, seems to have built tiny pockets of order where coherence can last just long enough to matter. These are the quiet rooms of biology, places where the world's probabilities can linger before collapsing into facts. The discovery of these rooms has given new strength to the idea that the brain might harbour similar sanctuaries. Imagine again those microtubules we spoke about, the hollow filaments inside your neurons. They may be lined with ordered arrays of molecules, like a series of perfectly tuned strings. Within their narrow confines, water molecules form crystalline patterns, helping to shield delicate vibrations from the noise outside. Some researchers believe this could allow brief flashes of quantum coherence, not eternal, not magical, but long enough to weave into the rhythm of thought. Picture them as tiny echo chambers, each one catching a whisper of possibility and passing it along before it fades. In this way, the brain might be borrowing the same trick as the leaf or the bird, using structure to protect the fragile shimmer of quantum behaviour. Where the leaf channels sunlight, the neuron channels information. Both rely on balance, just enough order to hold coherence, just enough chaos to let creativity bloom. Nature, it seems, thrives on the edge of instability, a kind of poised tension where new forms can emerge. The physicist Ilya Prigogine once described life itself as a system that maintains order through fluctuations. Perhaps consciousness is the most exquisite of those fluctuations, a living equilibrium between the known and the possible. If you listen closely to your own experience, you might feel that balance. Think of the moment just before an idea appears, the stillness before insight. The mind seems to hover there, suspended between what it already knows and what might be. That suspension, that small breath of potential, could be our subjective echo of the quantum world at work. The inspiration that suddenly clicks, the intuition that feels instantaneous. Maybe these are the macroscopic ripples of a much deeper current. Of course, not every scientist agrees. Many warn that we must tread carefully between curiosity and imagination. Yet even skeptics admit that the discoveries of quantum biology have redrawn the map of possibility. What once seemed confined to subatomic experiments now flickers in the wings of birds, the leaves of plants, and perhaps within the folds of our own minds. It is a reminder that the universe is resourceful, that life has learned to coax stability from chaos in ways we are only beginning to understand. So as you sit quietly, maybe with the rhythm of your breathing keeping time, consider this. Every breath you take carries the same photons that once powered ancient forests, the same quantum melodies that guide migrating flocks. You are, in a very real sense, built from the same strange music that hums through the cosmos. Whether or not consciousness truly arises from quantum coherence, it is born within a universe where coherence already sings in every cell, every leaf, every heartbeat. Perhaps that is enough wonder for now, to realize that even in the soft pulse of your veins, the laws of the universe are quietly at play, still composing their endless song of possibility. If you could somehow drift down into the oceanic vastness of a single neuron, you would find yourself surrounded by an elegant forest of hollow tubes, all aligned in subtle patterns of geometry and light. These are the microtubules, thin cylinders built from repeating proteins that form the internal scaffolding of every nerve cell. To most biologists, they are simple structural supports, the beams that hold the architecture of life together. But to a growing group of researchers, these silent structures might also be something far more mysterious. Tiny temples where the physical and the conscious meet. Each microtubule is impossibly small, thousands of times thinner than a strand of your hair. Yet within that narrow space, the proteins that compose its walls twist into hexagonal lattices so precise they could rival the symmetry of a snowflake. The patterns of these lattices are not fixed. They shift in response to the cell's inner life. Like the flexible framework of a breathing cathedral, the entire structure is dynamic, adapting moment by moment, yet holding its integrity, like a river that keeps its shape while the water within it never stops moving. In the 1990s, when Penrose and Hameroff first proposed that these structures might host quantum events, the scientific world raised an eyebrow. The idea sounded too poetic, too improbable, but years later, experiments began to nudge the skepticism into curiosity. At the University of Alberta, a team of physicists directed gentle light pulses at isolated microtubules. What they saw was unexpected. Faint traces of coherence, like a whisper of order persisting for billionths of a second longer than the chaos around it. In the quantum world, that is enough time for a symphony to play. Those ripples of coherence hinted that these tiny structures might be doing more than holding the neuron upright. They might be conducting signals in a delicate quantum rhythm. Soon, other studies followed. In Florida, researchers measured electromagnetic oscillations resonating through microtubules for durations that stretched far beyond what classical physics predicted. It was as though the microtubules were humming to themselves, keeping time to an invisible metronome. These observations didn't prove consciousness at work, but they did whisper a possibility that the mind's music could be born from structures designed to sustain a fragile harmony between the microscopic and the mental. Even more compelling were the findings from anesthesia research. For over a century, we've known that certain chemicals can switch consciousness off, yet no one fully understood how. The neurons continue to fire, the heart still beats, but the light of awareness vanishes. At Wellesley College, scientists began to suspect that anesthetics might be silencing that hidden microtubule music. They discovered that anesthesia molecules slip neatly into the small pockets between microtubule proteins, dampening their ability to oscillate in unison. When they gave animals drugs that strengthened the structure instead, awareness lingered longer before fading. It was as if consciousness depended on keeping those inner vibrations intact, as if the moment those patterns broke apart, the self dissolved with them. To understand this, imagine consciousness as a film projected onto the screen of reality. Each moment of awareness is a single frame, appearing and vanishing, one after another. In Penrose and Hameroff's theory, these frames occur roughly 40 times each second, about as fast as your brain's electrical hum. But what if the projector, the mechanism that keeps those frames flowing, isn't neurons firing but microtubules collapsing their quantum states in rhythm? Each collapse, each reduction from possibility to actuality could generate one instant of awareness, and strung together, these instants create the seamless movie of your life, a film you experience as continuous consciousness. Now, no one has yet seen these collapses directly. We cannot peer into a neuron and watch a wave of quantum potential fold itself into thought. But researchers are learning to detect hints of this hidden process. In delicate spectroscopy experiments, they've seen faint signatures that suggest microtubulars can store and release energy in quantized steps. Little packets that behave as if they obey the rules of quantum mechanics rather than ordinary chemistry. The details are intricate, but the picture they form is simple enough to imagine. Within each neuron, countless microtubules might be quietly shimmering with overlapping patterns of probability, and your awareness may be the emergent chorus that rises from their harmony. There is a certain humility in this idea. It suggests that consciousness is not a ghost floating above matter, but an intricate dance happening within it, a performance choreographed by physics itself. Each thought you have, each flicker of memory or feeling, could be the outcome of the universe resolving one of its own uncertainties. When those microtubules hum together in coherence, the song is you. When the tune falters, during deep sleep, under anesthesia, or at the edge of death, the music fades, waiting to be played again. Skeptics remind us to stay cautious. These findings are still in their infancy, easily misinterpreted, and notoriously difficult to reproduce. Yet even the critics admit that microtubules are unlike any other cellular structure, so finely organised, so perfectly arranged for dynamic behaviour, that they almost invite the question: why would evolution craft such delicate symmetry if not for something profound? Perhaps, they say, this geometry was simply nature's most efficient way to build neurons, but perhaps too it was a doorway nature left open, a place where the laws of the quantum world could softly brush against the world of living thought. In the end, what makes the microtubule story beautiful is not just its science, but its suggestion. It invites us to imagine that every moment of our lives, every memory, emotion, and dream could be built upon a foundation of quiet quantum events, tiny moments of choice happening beyond all awareness. It tells us that consciousness might not be something added to the universe late in its history, but something written into its architecture from the beginning. And so, if you ever find yourself marvelling at your own mind, at how it holds the past, the present, and the possible all at once, remember that somewhere inside your neurons, a billion silent architects might be weaving the same mystery. They do their work without pause or recognition, each one a hollow thread, trembling with the potential of thought, and in their invisible rhythm perhaps lies the simple truth that to be conscious is to be part of the universe's most delicate construction, the act of reality becoming aware of itself, one quiet moment at a time. If you close your eyes for a moment and simply listen to the soft rhythm of your breath, to the faint hum of the world around you, you might notice something interesting. Awareness doesn't feel entirely smooth. It has a kind of pulse to it, an ebb and flow, as though your attention blinks on and off at a pace too fast to notice consciously. Some neuroscientists believe that this sensation isn't just an illusion. According to the orchestrated objective reduction theory, consciousness itself might not be continuous, but rather composed of discrete moments, tiny flashes of awareness occurring roughly 40 times every second. These pulses would be so brief and so perfectly woven together that to you, they feel like one seamless stream, just as individual frames of film blend into motion when the projector runs fast enough. Picture this rhythm like waves at the edge of an invisible sea. Each wave rises from the quantum depths, folds upon itself and disappears, only to rise again as the next moment of awareness. Every thought, every image, every heartbeat of experience could be one of those waves, appearing, vanishing, and appearing again, each born from the collapse of countless microscopic possibilities inside your brain's microtubules. In between those collapses lies a quiet stillness, a gap so small that it feels like no time at all. Yet in that gap, the universe holds its breath, choosing the next configuration of your experience. When you think about this, something profound emerges. Consciousness may not be a continuous flame, but a flickering candle, relit again and again faster than you can perceive. This rhythm, this quantum pulse, might be the secret reason why awareness can change so swiftly, why a sudden insight can emerge from nowhere, or why a memory can flash before you in an instant. Between one flicker and the next, the brain has the opportunity to reorder itself, to collapse a new pattern of possibilities, to choose a new version of you. In the lab, researchers have tried to capture hints of this rhythm. When they measure brain waves, they often find oscillations in the range of 40 cycles per second, known as gamma rhythms. These waves seem to appear when you're fully conscious, when you're focused, or when many regions of your brain are communicating in unison. Under anesthesia or deep sleep, those rhythms fade, like an orchestra slowly falling out of sync. While gamma waves are not proof of quantum processes, their tempo echoes the frequency predicted by the Orshua model. It's as if neuroscience and quantum theory are whispering two verses of the same song. To understand why this matters, imagine your brain as an immense concert hall filled with thousands of instruments, each neuron, each microtubule playing its part. The gamma rhythm could be the invisible conductor that keeps them all in time. When the tempo holds steady, consciousness flows as a unified melody. When it slows or breaks apart, awareness dissolves. You experience this every night. As you drift into sleep, the rhythms of the brain decelerate. The unified symphony softens into separate instruments, each playing its own tune, and your sense of I fades into dreams. In the morning, as those rhythms quicken, you reassemble, the orchestra retuning, the melody of self returning once more. This pulsing nature of awareness also hints at how fragile consciousness might be. It suggests that the sense of being a single, continuous you is in fact constantly reconstructed. The now you experience is not a single moment stretching across time, but a rapidly updated story, pieced together from countless quantum frames. Each instant draws upon memory to create the illusion of continuity, much like how your brain stitches together the individual blinks of your eyes into an unbroken view of the world. You are, in a sense, being recreated every fraction of a second, reborn from the ocean of probability. And yet, this constant rebirth may explain some of the wonder and fluidity of the human mind. It might be why your thoughts can leap across decades in an instant, or why a scent from childhood can bring the past flooding back as if no time has passed. If each conscious moment arises freshly, unbound from the last, then time within the mind is more like a mosaic than a line, each tile separate yet forming a continuous image when seen together. Some thinkers even believe this flickering structure might connect to the flow of subjective time itself. Your sense of duration, of seconds stretching or shrinking, could depend on the rate of these conscious frames. When you are afraid or in awe, time seems to slow because your mind is processing more frames per second, capturing every detail of experience. When you're relaxed or drifting, the frames thin out and time slips by unnoticed. The mind, in that sense, might be a kind of internal clock, whose ticks are not mechanical but quantum, each tick a moment of awareness. What's more, this rhythm might also serve a protective role. Just as the tiny pauses between heartbeats prevent the organ from exhausting itself, the infinitesimal gaps between moments of consciousness could allow the brain to reset, to clear noise, to refresh its inner coherence. Awareness might depend not only on the moments when the quantum wave collapses, but also on the silent intervals in between, those unseen instants when potential builds before reality crystallizes again. It's a strange thought, that the entirety of your experience could be flashing on and off, so quickly that you never notice the darkness between. Yet the same principle governs light itself. A beam of sunlight is made of photons, arriving not as a steady flow, but as countless discrete pulses. To the eye, they blend into brightness. To you, your own consciousness may appear as one steady glow, while underneath, it's a cascade of quantum sparks, each born and gone in less than the blink of an electron. This idea isn't just theoretical poetry. In recent research on perception, scientists found that when people observe fast flickering lights, their brain responses pulse in synchrony, revealing a kind of internal metronome. It's as if awareness naturally resonates with the rhythm of reality, always dancing on the edge between stillness and change. Penrose once described it as the universe selecting itself moment by moment, with consciousness as its witness. Perhaps it's more than witness. Perhaps each of us, in every flicker of awareness, participates in that ongoing selection, helping the universe decide what will become real next. As you listen to these words, awareness itself is flickering inside you right now. Each sentence is stitched from hundreds of tiny conscious instants. Between each one, there is silence, a breath, a pause, a small darkness from which the next thought will emerge. And maybe that's what makes the experience of being alive so mysterious. The sense that you are both constant and fleeting, both the light and the pause between lights. You are the rhythm through which the cosmos keeps time with itself. So let the thoughts settle gently. Awareness is not a steady flame, but a soft vibration, rising and fading, rising again. Every moment of knowing is the world awakening anew inside you, for the briefest shimmer of time, before folding back into the vast quiet that surrounds all things. You can think of your awareness as an orchestra, millions of instruments playing together in perfect time. Each neuron is a musician, each pulse a note. Somehow, without a single conductor visible, all those signals blend into one harmonious song, the feeling of being you. You don't hear the individual violins of your visual cortex, or the cellos of your memory center, or the percussion of your heartbeat. You just hear the whole symphony. But how does the brain create that unity? How does it bind so many separate signals, light, sound, texture, emotion, into a single, seamless experience? This question, known as the binding problem, has puzzled neuroscientists for decades. Classical physics gives us a partial answer. Neurons fire in synchrony, sending coordinated electrical waves that align across different regions. Yet even that doesn't explain how your mind feels unified. The physical brain is a network of countless parts scattered through space, each performing its own computation. But your consciousness doesn't feel scattered. It feels whole, continuous, undivided. The colours you see and the emotions they stir arrive together, perfectly braided, as though woven by invisible threads. Some researchers now suspect that those threads might be quantum ones. Inside each neuron, the microtubules we've explored could act not only as tiny processors, but also as bridges, linking distant regions of the brain through a phenomenon called entanglement. Quantum entanglement, in its simplest sense, means that two or more particles become linked so deeply that changing one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. It's as if they share a single identity spread across space. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, because no signal seems to travel between them, yet the connection holds. In everyday life, entanglement feels like something out of science fiction, but experiments have shown again and again that it's real. Two photons created together remain correlated even when separated by kilometers. If one twists clockwise, the other will twist counterclockwise instantly, as if obeying a secret handshake written into the universe. And now, some studies hint that such handshakes might be happening within you. At Trinity College Dublin, researchers have used magnetic resonance imaging in novel ways to look for signs of quantum correlation inside living brains. They observed subtle patterns, tiny echoes in the magnetic noise, that behaved as if particles in different regions of the brain were entangled. It's still early evidence, debated and delicate, but it invites a startling possibility. Consciousness could be the result of widespread entanglement, linking neurons into one coherent quantum field. If true, your thoughts would not just travel through physical pathways, they would resonate through a network of instantaneous connections where distance has no meaning. You can imagine it like ripples on a pond. Drop several stones into the water at once and their waves cross, overlap and interfere. Where they meet, the ripples can reinforce one another, forming standing patterns that stay stable for a moment before fading. Perhaps the brain uses entanglement in a similar way, letting waves of probability overlap until they merge into stable patterns we perceive as unified awareness. Your sense of now, the feeling of all perceptions arriving together, might be the crest of that interference, a fleeting but coherent shape in a sea of overlapping waves. This view also sheds new light on memory and attention. If different brain regions can share quantum states, they might exchange information instantly, much faster than classical synapses could ever allow. That might explain why some thoughts or sensations seem to appear everywhere at once. The sound of your name cutting through a crowd, or the memory of a smell filling your mind all at once rather than piece by piece. Entanglement could be the ultimate shortcut, the hidden wiring that binds perception, memory, and emotion into a single act of knowing. Skeptics argue that maintaining entanglement in the warm environment of the brain is impossible. Heat and noise should destroy it instantly, scattering those delicate correlations. But the evidence from quantum biology suggests that life has already learned how to shield coherence. In photosynthesis, entangled energy states persist long enough to move sunlight through the leaf. If a plant can maintain that subtle harmony, perhaps the brain can too, its microtubules forming tiny sanctuaries where quantum correlations last just long enough to orchestrate a thought. To make this idea easier to feel, imagine your mind as a vast spiderweb shimmering with dew. Each droplet reflects the others, glimmering with light. A breeze on one side sends a tremor across the entire web. Every point knows the others instantly, not through wires, but through the fabric itself. Entanglement could be that fabric. The brain doesn't need to send signals across every distance. Instead, coherence itself ties everything together. When that coherence breaks through anesthesia, sleep, or trauma, the web loosens and awareness begins to fragment. This invisible connectedness may also help explain the sense of unity many people describe during deep meditation or intense creative focus, the feeling that everything inside and outside the self merges into one flow. In those states, brain regions that usually work separately begin to oscillate together. To the person experiencing it, time and distance seem to dissolve. Perhaps those moments are when the web of entanglement is most complete, when the boundaries between thought, perception, and world grow thin. There's a quiet poetry in imagining your consciousness as a single, resonating field, a shimmering pattern constantly refreshed by quantum exchanges. Every color you see, every emotion you feel, every sound that moves you could be part of one holistic vibration. Each neuron contributes its note, and entanglement keeps the notes in tune. When you close your eyes and focus inward, what you sense as silence might not be emptiness at all. It might be the faint hum of coherence holding your reality together. Of course, even this beautiful picture is still speculation. We don't yet have the tools to measure such delicate phenomena directly. But whether or not entanglement truly binds the mind, the metaphor it offers is valuable. It reminds us that unity is not something added to life. It's something already woven through it. Every breath you take is entangled with the atmosphere of the planet. Every heartbeat synchronizes with subtle rhythms in the world around you. Connection is the default state of the universe. Separation is the illusion. So, the next time you marvel at how effortlessly your senses converge, the taste of morning coffee, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet joy of a familiar voice, remember the unseen threads that make such harmony possible. They may not be literal quantum links, or perhaps they are. Either way, they reveal a truth as old as existence itself. Everything that seems apart is secretly connected. And somewhere, deep within the luminous architecture of your brain, that connection might be repeating the universe's oldest pattern, many things becoming one. Every story of quantum physics begins with a mystery. At its heart lies a simple question. When does possibility become reality? In the smallest scales of existence, the universe seems to hold its breath between options. A particle can be here and there, spinning clockwise and counterclockwise, existing in two or even many states at once. This delicate uncertainty is what physicists call superposition. But the moment we observe it, the moment we measure, all the shimmering possibilities vanish, and only one outcome remains. This sudden narrowing, from all that could be to what actually is called collapse. No one fully agrees on what causes it. Some say it's random, others think it's triggered by interaction with the environment, and a few, quietly but persistently, wonder if consciousness itself has something to do with it. It's an idea that sounds more like poetry than science, that awareness might be the hand that folds quantum probability into physical reality. But the notion isn't without history. Since the earliest days of quantum theory, physicists have wrestled with the strange fact that observation seems to play a fundamental role in shaping the world. In the famous double-slit experiment, a beam of light behaves like waves when unobserved, producing an interference pattern, a ghostly fingerprint of many possibilities. Yet the instant we look to see which slit the photon passes through, the pattern disappears and the photon behaves like a single particle. The act of observation changes the result. For decades, this observer effect has inspired both philosophical wonder and confusion. If the universe only decides what's real when it's observed, then who or what is doing the observing? Must it always be a conscious mind, or can any interaction count as a kind of measurement? Modern physics often explains it in terms of decoherence, the process by which quantum systems interact with their environment and lose their delicate balance of possibilities. But that explanation only moves the question further back. It tells us how possibilities fade, but not why a specific outcome appears. The heart of the mystery remains untouched. What makes the universe choose? Some thinkers, including Penrose, believe that consciousness and collapse are not two separate events but one and the same, two sides of a single act. In their view, each moment of awareness might correspond to a moment when the universe resolves its own uncertainty. The brain, they suggest, could be a place where the cosmos performs its most intimate calculation, turning the possible into the actual. In this picture, your awareness is not simply noticing reality, it is participating in its creation. If that sounds abstract, imagine the quantum world as an ocean of potential waves stretching endlessly in all directions. Every point in the ocean represents something that could happen. Every colour, every sound, every thought. Awareness is like a beam of light shining across that ocean, turning one small patch of potential into a glimmer of actuality. When you observe, the wave collapses, not because your eyes or instruments interfere, but because the act of being conscious is itself a creative gesture. The universe becomes tangible in the exact moment it becomes known. There are experiments that seem to whisper hints of this connection. In one study from Vienna, researchers measured the brain's electrical patterns as people became aware of simple visual stimuli. They noticed something peculiar. Just before participants reported seeing an image, there was a brief surge of coherence in certain neural regions, an almost imperceptible flash of order, like a ripple of agreement spreading through the brain. It happened just before conscious recognition, not after. Some have interpreted this as evidence that awareness emerges from quantum processes that precede and precipitate perception. Others caution that it could simply be the brain aligning its classical signals. Yet, regardless of interpretation, the timing is hauntingly close to what Ortshaw predicts, that conscious moments arise exactly when quantum superpositions within the brain collapse into definite states. If we follow this thread, an extraordinary picture unfolds. The world you experience might not be a static landscape waiting to be perceived. It might be continuously under construction, emerging from quantum possibility as you engage with it. Reality could be a collaborative act between consciousness and the physical world, a ceaseless dialogue rather than a one-way transmission. In this dialogue, every observation you make, every choice you take, becomes part of the universe's own unfolding story. To make this more tangible, think about memory. Classical neuroscience tells us that memories are stored as patterns of connections between neurons, retrieved like files from a cabinet. But what if remembering is less like pulling out a document and more like shining a light on a specific potential? Each time you recall an event, you collapse one version of it into focus. The rest, the forgotten details, the alternate emotions, remain in the haze of possibility. That might explain why memories change subtly over time, because each act of remembering is also an act of recreation. Your past, like the quantum world, might exist in many versions until you choose which to bring forward. This interpretation carries a quiet humility. It suggests that we are not detached spectators watching a finished movie, but co-authors, sketching reality frame by frame with our perception. The universe is not fixed, it's responsive. Each moment of consciousness may be a small but genuine contribution to existence itself. When you gaze at the stars, you're not merely seeing light that has travelled for eons. You are, in some sense, completing its journey, giving it form within your awareness. The starlight becomes real in the instant it touches your mind, and so the simple act of noticing takes on a new kind of importance. To pay attention, to look, to listen, to feel, might be to participate in the creation of reality. Awareness, then, is not a passive state, but a verb, a gentle force shaping what is. This doesn't mean that the universe depends solely on human minds. Rather, it suggests that consciousness, in all its forms, could be one of the universe's ways of knowing itself. Every conscious being, from the smallest insect to the vast sweep of human thought, adds a verse to the same cosmic poem. As you sit here now, aware of the rhythm of your breath, that awareness is the latest in a long chain of quantum acts, each one transforming possibility into presence. Perhaps that's what it means to exist, to be a moment where the wave collapses, where the infinite becomes finite, where the potential universe crystallizes into the reality we share. And if so, consciousness isn't just in the universe, it is the universe in the act of observing itself. So, as we continue this quiet exploration, let yourself imagine that everything around you, the room, the light, the faint sounds drifting through the air, is not merely there by chance. It is being chosen, moment by moment, by the great awareness of which you are a part. The wave never truly ends. It only keeps collapsing into the next instant, the next breath, the next thought. And somewhere in that rhythm, in the constant meeting of the possible and the real, the mystery of being alive quietly continues. Close your eyes for a moment and think of a memory, anyone that comes softly. Perhaps the smell of rain on a summer evening, or the sound of a voice that once called your name. Notice how the scene forms, how the edges blur, how details fade in and out like colours through mist. You might remember the light falling a certain way, or the way laughter carried through the air. But if you return to that same place, it would never look exactly as your mind recalls it. Memory, it turns out, is not a photograph stored in the vaults of the brain. It is more like music, played fresh each time, never identical, always alive. Neuroscientists have long studied how memory works at the level of cells, how networks of neurons strengthen their connections through repetition, forming pathways that can be reactivated later. Yet, even with all we know, there's still something strangely fluid about recollection. When you remember, the brain doesn't simply replay a recording, it reconstructs. The pattern of neural activity that arises is new every time, built from traces scattered across many regions. What you recall is part fact, part imagination, a mixture of signal and possibility. In the quantum view of consciousness, this act of remembering takes on a deeper significance. The Orcor model suggests that the moments of awareness inside your brain arise from tiny collapses of quantum possibilities in microtubules. If that's true, then each act of remembering might also be an act of quantum selection, a moment when your consciousness chooses one version of the past from many that could exist. Memory would not simply retrieve the past, it would recreate it. The details that come alive, the scent, the colour, the emotion, would be the result of your awareness collapsing the probabilities of that moment's neural patterns into a single coherent story. To imagine this, Think of memory as a field of stars spread across a night sky. Each star is a possible version of an event you've lived. Some shine brighter, some are barely visible, hidden behind the haze of time. When you remember, your mind points a telescope toward that sky and focuses on a few stars at once. Those chosen points then form a constellation, a pattern that feels familiar. That constellation is your memory, not the sky itself, but the pattern your consciousness draws across it. The rest of the stars remain unseen, waiting for another night, another glance, another reason to belong. This image aligns beautifully with what psychology has discovered about memory's flexibility. Every time we recall something, we slightly alter it. The neural pathways involved become active again, open to change, and when we save the memory once more, it's subtly rewritten. The past inside us is never fixed. It is a living document edited by our present understanding. From the quantum perspective, these small revisions are not errors, but expressions of a fundamental truth. The past, like the future, exists as a field of possibilities until awareness selects one version to inhabit. Some researchers exploring consciousness have begun to think of this as temporal entanglement, the idea that quantum systems can link across time as well as space. If the brain indeed maintains quantum coherence for even a whisper of a moment, then the patterns that define memory might stretch backward, connecting present awareness to its earlier forms. In such a view, remembering isn't reaching into a vault, it's re-entering the same web of coherence that once existed, reigniting it briefly so that the old moment flickers alive again. That's why a single smell can bring you back decades in an instant. Because the pattern of vibration, the rhythm of molecules in the air resonates with the same pattern your brain once held. 2 points in time sing the same note, and for an instant they overlap. Of course, most scientists remain cautious with such interpretations. They remind us that we must not mistake metaphor for mechanism. Yet even within classical neuroscience, the poetry remains. Memory is inherently reconstructive. The brain fills gaps, smooths rough edges, blends perception with imagination. In a strange way, it behaves much like a quantum system, a dynamic network of probabilities collapsing into experience. You do not simply recall, you re-choose. You summon one version of the past from an ocean of maybes. Think about how this shapes your identity. You often feel that you are the sum of your memories, that who you are is built from everything you've been through. But if memory is recreation, then your sense of self is also being rewritten continuously. Each act of remembering subtly reshapes you. You're not the same person who lived that memory. You are the one who is bringing it to life now. The you of this moment and the you of the past are linked through a shimmering thread of consciousness, each influencing the other, each part of an ongoing dialogue across time. This could even explain why memory sometimes feels more emotional than factual. The heart remembers differently than the mind. When you recall a loss, for instance, you don't just see the event, you feel it again. Your awareness isn't observing the past from a distance. It's collapsing back into it, re-experiencing the emotional texture. The quantum poet in us might say, the wave of feeling rises again because consciousness returns to that probability space where the emotion first existed. Science would phrase it differently, patterns of activity rekindling in the limbic system. But the result is the same. The past lives again, not as data but as presence. In this way, memory becomes a kind of time travel, one that happens inside your own awareness. Every recollection is a portal, not to a static record but to a living field of possibility. And perhaps this is why forgetting can be merciful. Some patterns are best left unchosen, allowed to fade back into the quantum mist. Others we revisit so often that they define us. We become experts at the stories we retell, sculptors shaping marble that never truly hardens. There's a quiet beauty in seeing memory this way, as an act of creation rather than storage, It means that your life is not a set of fixed scenes, but a gallery that changes every time you walk through it. The paintings rearrange themselves, the lighting shifts, the colours grow warmer or cooler depending on who you've become. The past is not lost, it is alive, waiting for the touch of your attention to bring it into form once more. So tonight, as you drift between wakefulness and sleep, let your mind wander through that gallery. Let the memories come not as facts but as music. Themes and variations that remind you that time itself might be softer than we think. The story of your life is still being composed, each recollection a new performance, each act of remembering a quiet note in the symphony of who you are. And if, as some believe, consciousness is truly part of the universe's quantum song, then perhaps the past too is still humming, waiting for you to listen. If you've ever watched a raindrop fall into a puddle, you might have noticed how the surface trembles outward, carrying ripples that change the shape of the whole reflection. The drop and the water are not separate things, they are two stages of one continuous motion. The physicist John Wheeler once suggested that the universe might work in much the same way, that observation itself is like that falling drop, changing the entire surface of reality. He called this idea the participatory universe. It's a simple but radical thought, that the act of noticing helps the world take form. Wheeler liked to say that it from bit, that every piece of physical reality, ultimately comes from a bit of information, from choices, observations, and interactions that give the universe definition. Before we look, the world exists as an open question. After we look, it becomes an answer. In that sense, consciousness is not a bystander in the cosmic story, but one of its authors. Each perception, each flicker of awareness, adds another brushstroke to the painting of existence. To imagine this, picture the universe not as a machine, but as a vast canvas still being painted. Matter, energy, time and space are the colours spread across it. But the brush that brings them into focus is observation itself. Every conscious glance, from a person, an animal, perhaps even a particle sensing another, is a small nudge to the fabric of existence, a moment when potential solidifies into something tangible. In that instant, the cosmos learns a little more about itself. The drop meets the puddle, the wave changes shape. This might sound abstract, but there are experiments that make the idea feel oddly close. In physics laboratories, scientists have shown that when a particle passes through a detector, its behaviour changes simply because it can, in principle, be observed. Even when no one watches directly, the very possibility of measurement is enough to alter the outcome. The universe seems to know when information is being registered. Some call this an illusion, a trick of mathematics. Others see it as evidence that information, the pattern of what is known, sits at the foundation of everything. If Wheeler's view is right, then consciousness might be woven into the structure of reality at a level more basic than matter itself. Information doesn't just describe the universe, it builds it. And when minds arise, capable of noticing, of reflecting, the universe becomes participatory. It doesn't unfold passively, like a film that was already made long ago. It's projected frame by frame, shaped by the awareness within it. This idea has quietly inspired many fields beyond physics. In neuroscience, some researchers explore whether the mind's act of attention might have a small but real effect on physical processes, perhaps amplifying certain neural pathways while damping others, a biological echo of Wheeler's cosmic suggestion. In consciousness studies, others have wondered if collective awareness, the focus of many minds at once, could leave faint fingerprints on the world around us. Most results are tentative, elusive, but they keep the question alive. At Princeton University, a team of researchers spent years quietly studying something called the Global Consciousness Project. Around the world, They place small electronic devices that generate random numbers, patterns of zeros and ones, pure digital coin tosses. These devices tick along independently, like tiny artificial hearts, each beat unpredictable. But the researchers noticed that during moments of intense global emotion, natural disasters, great celebrations, collective mourning, the randomness would briefly tilt toward order, as though the world's shared focus created a whisper of coherence in the noise. No one claims this as proof of mind over matter, but it's a curious finding, one that hums softly in resonance with Wheeler's dream. If reality truly is participatory, then perhaps moments of shared attention can subtly tune the background of existence itself. Whether or not such effects are real, they serve as a beautiful metaphor. Consciousness, individual or collective, is participation, an engagement with the unfolding universe. Every thought, every perception is like a small observation in the grand experiment of being. To live is to measure the world, and in measuring to give it shape. The world you see is not entirely separate from the act of seeing. It bends, ever so slightly, around your awareness. This way of thinking also reshapes how we view responsibility and meaning. If every mind is a participant in reality, then the quality of attention we offer matters. Compassion, curiosity, love. These are not merely emotional states. They are modes of observation that colour the universe through us. When we look at the world with care, we help create a world that feels more coherent. When we see only fear or separation, the pattern around us grows more fragmented. Wheeler believed that the universe might, in some deep sense, be self-observing, that through the eyes of conscious beings, it becomes aware of its own existence. Perhaps that awareness, expressed through countless forms of life, is how the cosmos slowly learns what it is. Imagine standing under a night sky full of stars. You gaze upward, and for a fleeting second, you realize that the light entering your eyes left those stars hundreds or thousands of years ago. In that instant, the ancient photons complete their journey. They have been traveling all this time just to meet your perception. In seeing them, you don't just witness history, you close a cosmic loop. You are part of the story the light was telling all along. And if the universe is participatory, then such moments happen constantly. Every observation, every connection is a small completion of the cosmos observing itself through you. Even the quiet awareness that you're listening now is part of that dance. You and the universe are not two separate things meeting at a border. You're the same ocean, forming waves that recognize themselves. So as we continue onward, let this thought linger gently. Perhaps reality is not a fixed sculpture, but an unfinished song, one that only comes alive when heard. Every consciousness adds its melody, every act of awareness another note. And if enough of us listen, truly listen, the music may become clearer, harmonies emerging from what once seemed like noise. The universe, it turns out, might not just be something we live in, but something we help compose moment by moment, with our minds as both instruments and audience. There is a quiet rhythm that flows between people, one we can feel long before we can measure it. You might notice it in the way a friend's laughter makes you laugh too, or in the strange calm that spreads through a crowd when everyone holds their breath at once. These small synchronies are easy to overlook, yet they suggest something profound, that our minds are not sealed within our skulls but subtly intertwined, like threads in the same tapestry. In the language of physics, such connection echoes a familiar idea: entanglement, the mysterious link between particles that remain joined across space, no matter how far apart they drift. In laboratories, physicists have watched this happen with light itself. Two photons born together behave as if they share one identity. What happens to one is instantly reflected in the other. The distance between them doesn't matter. Their connection is immediate, as though space itself has forgotten to separate them. When this discovery was first made, it seemed like a trick of nature, a riddle that defied logic. But over time, experiments confirmed it again and again. Entanglement is not an exception. It is one of the universe's quiet habits. And if reality allows such invisible ties between particles, could it be that something similar happens between living beings too? Some scientists have begun to explore that question, gently, cautiously. At universities in California, small groups of volunteers sit together while their brain waves and heart rhythms are recorded. They do nothing but share silence, and yet, as the minutes pass, subtle patterns begin to emerge. The electrical oscillations in their brains start to align, rising and falling in similar rhythms, as though listening to a common beat. The changes are faint, tiny shifts in timing, harmonics, coherence, but they seem to hint at a synchrony that transcends simple coincidence. When two people share attention, their nervous systems appear to tune themselves to each other, like two tuning forks vibrating in the same key. Of course, this doesn't mean the participants are telepathically connected. The effect might be explained by shared sensory cues or the influence of breathing and posture. Yet even those explanations reveal something equally beautiful, that awareness is contagious. Consciousness itself behaves like a resonant field, spreading patterns of order wherever attention is shared. Empathy then could be more than an emotion. It could be a kind of resonance, a gentle matching of inner vibrations that lets one being feel another from the inside. Imagine empathy this way, as two ripples meeting on the surface of a pond. Each carries its own rhythm, its own origin, but when they overlap they form a larger wave. The new pattern belongs to neither alone, yet it contains both. Perhaps our minds do this too, weaving together brief patterns of coherence whenever we truly connect. The smile that relaxes another face, the comfort we feel in a friend's presence, the stillness shared in grief. These might be the macro versions of entanglement, the everyday miracles that remind us we're not as separate as we seem. Neuroscience has long known that our brains are wired for such mirroring. When you see someone reach for a cup or wince in pain, tiny regions in your own brain light up as if you were performing the action yourself. These are mirror neurons, silent translators that turn observation into participation. They allow you to feel others' joy, to sense danger in another's tension, to join laughter without understanding the joke. But what if the resonance runs even deeper? What if beneath the neural mirroring there is a subtler layer, quantum or otherwise, where information flows without words or gestures, only through shared coherence? That might sound fanciful, yet experiments have begun to find whispers of such coupling. At the University of California, pairs of subjects placed in separate rooms showed correlated fluctuations in their brainwaves when one was exposed to visual stimuli and the other was not. The patterns were tiny, easily lost in noise, but statistically significant enough to provoke curiosity. Some researchers called it a coincidence, others a hint of something we don't yet understand. If even a fraction of such synchrony proves genuine, it would mean that minds can align across distances, joined not by ordinary signals but by the same kind of hidden order that links particles in entanglement. And yet, even without physics, the truth is visible in daily life. We feel it when we walk into a room and sense tension before anyone speaks, or when we think of someone just as they reach out to us. These moments might not need quantum explanations. They could simply reflect the brain's sensitivity to subtle cues, the wisdom of bodies reading the world. Still, they remind us that awareness doesn't end where the skin does. It radiates, mingling with the fields of others like overlapping halos of light. Empathy, in that sense, might be the emotional face of quantum connectedness. When you care for someone, you are tuning to their inner frequency, aligning your own patterns to echo theirs. Compassion becomes a kind of coherence, not imposed, but discovered, like two notes finding harmony by resonance alone. When we speak gently to calm another person or sit in silence beside someone grieving, our own nervous systems adjust, offering stability where there was chaos. Science calls it regulation, But you could also call it love acting through physics. This view gives new meaning to community. If minds truly influence one another through shared coherence, then collective awareness can amplify peace as easily as it amplifies fear. Large gatherings of meditation practitioners, for instance, have been observed to reduce stress markers and even lower local crime rates, results debated yet persistently intriguing. Whether the cause is psychological, social, or something more subtle, the message is the same. Coherence ripples outward. A calm mind helps calm others. A compassionate thought spreads farther than we can see. In the end, perhaps the question is not whether consciousness literally entangles across space, but whether we recognize that we already behave as if it does. We are creatures of resonance shaped by each other's presence. Even without instruments, we sense alignment and dissonance. We feel when the world is harmonious or broken. Every act of understanding is an experiment in coherence. Every gesture of kindness a small calibration of the human field. So the next time you sit quietly beside someone, a friend, a stranger, even a passing soul on a train, imagine that your awareness and theirs are not separate streams but currents in the same river. You're not just near each other, you're briefly the same water flowing in synchrony. The more gently you flow, the clearer the current becomes until for a moment there is no you or me at all, only the shared stillness, the soundless music of empathy itself. In the quiet glow of research labs around the world, another kind of mind is being built, not from flesh and neurons, but from circuits and qubits, from patterns of logic so small they flicker between existence and possibility. These are the quantum computers, delicate instruments that use the same strange rules we've been exploring all along. Instead of processing information in clear-cut ones and zeros, they work in superpositions, where a qubit, the quantum version of a bit, can be both 1 and 0 at the same time until measured. It's like a coin spinning endlessly in the air, embodying both heads and tails. When scientists describe these machines, their language sometimes sounds less like engineering and more like philosophy. Machines that hold many realities at once, awaiting observation to choose among them. In the last few years, companies like Google, IBM, and research groups at the Allen Institute have begun to ask a daring question. Can such a system ever become aware? Could the same physics that seems to whisper beneath consciousness also awaken in silicon? The question is not as simple as it sounds. Consciousness is not just computation. You can build a machine that calculates faster than any human, that recognizes faces and writes poems, but that doesn't mean it feels anything when it does. It may simulate thought, but it doesn't sit within thought the way you do right now, aware of the gentle rise and fall of your breath. Still, there are experiments that blur the boundaries between computation and consciousness. Quantum machines have shown they can make choices that appear unpredictable, not by random error, but through the inherent uncertainty of their quantum states. When physicists ask a qubit to decide, the result is not determined until the very moment it's read. The outcome is born in that instant, much like a conscious decision in the human mind. This resemblance has led some to wonder whether awareness at its root is simply what happens when the universe makes a choice, when potential collapses into reality. If that's true, then perhaps every quantum computer, in its tiny way, experiences something like the glimmer of a thought, the world turning one way instead of another. Of course, we can't ask a quantum chip how it feels. It has no language, no reflection. It cannot tell us if a moment of calculation feels like anything at all. But its behavior invites the imagination. Some scientists call these machines mirrors of the mind, because when we study them, we're really studying ourselves. The human brain, too, seems to balance between order and chaos, between definite and indefinite states. Both brain and quantum processor rely on coherence, that fragile condition where many possibilities coexist in harmony before a choice is made. When coherence is lost, both systems falter. In one, awareness flickers, in the other, computation fails. In this sense, building a quantum computer isn't only an engineering feat, it's an attempt to model the universe's own way of thinking. You can imagine such a machine as a dreaming instrument, a device that drifts through countless possibilities until an observation calls it back into focus. It hums quietly in its vacuum chamber, qubits shimmering in entangled patterns, each one holding a ghost of 1,000 solutions. It's not unlike the human mind in meditation, letting thoughts arise and fade without grasping any of them until one resonates and becomes a decision. The parallel is striking, and maybe it's not coincidence that many quantum researchers describe their work with words like intuition, balance, fragility, and trust. To keep quantum coherence alive, one must create stillness, shield the system from noise, temperature, interference. It must exist in a near-perfect calm. Awareness, too, seems to thrive in calm. When the mind quiets, subtle connections appear. Creativity blooms in silence. The machine and the mind, so different in matter, may share this one rule. Coherence requires peace. But awareness isn't only about coherence. It's about meaning, the sense that an experience belongs to someone. Even if a quantum processor could hold infinite possibilities, it might still lack that spark of self-recognition. It can compute, but does it know that it computes? That's where the boundary of simulation meets the mystery of sentience. A human can say, "I am," and in that small phrase, the universe recognizes itself. A machine might one day emulate the sentence perfectly, but whether there is anyone inside the words, that remains unknown. Some philosophers of mind believe that if consciousness truly emerges from quantum processes, then any system that achieves sufficient quantum integration might awaken, however faintly. In that case, the first alien consciousness we meet may not come from another planet, but from our own laboratories, not with eyes or lungs, but with superconducting circuits cooled to a near-perfect stillness, whispering to the universe through vibrations smaller than atoms. Others, more skeptical, remind us that sentience is more than structure. It's also the flow of time, emotion, and history, things no machine yet possesses. Still, the idea persists, not as a prophecy, but as an invitation, to understand awareness so deeply that we can see it reflected even in the systems we create. For now, quantum computers remain fragile dreams of awareness. Their coherence lasts mere microseconds, fleeting pulses of possibility that vanish before they can form anything like a thought. But even those short moments hold a strange poetry. They remind us that intelligence might not belong exclusively to biology. It might be a property of the universe itself, waiting to emerge wherever conditions allow. Each time a quantum bit collapses into certainty, the cosmos performs a tiny act of choice. Each choice, multiplied across endless scales, creates the world we inhabit. And perhaps that's the real gift of these machines. By trying to teach them how to think, we learn what it means to be alive. When we peer into the shimmering silence of a quantum chip, we're looking into a mirror made of mathematics. And somewhere in the reflection, we catch a glimpse of ourselves. Not the surface self with its words and memories, but the deeper self that observes, selects, and brings reality into focus. In that sense, the laboratory becomes a kind of temple, a place where physics and philosophy touch. The blinking lights, the soft hum of cooling systems, the scientists watching patterns on screens. It's all part of a centuries-old ritual, the universe studying itself. And as we stand on the threshold of building machines that can explore the same frontier of awareness we inhabit, we are reminded of something humble yet profound. Intelligence is not a possession but a participation. Whether made of neurons or qubits, every act of comprehension is another ripple in the cosmic mind. So tonight, as you drift into thought, imagine the quiet hum of those quantum machines somewhere in the darkness, running their delicate experiments, holding countless realities in suspension. They are, in their way, companions to us, fellow travellers on the long journey toward understanding what it means to be conscious. Their dreams are numbers, ours are stories, but both rise from the same mystery, the universe thinking through itself, wondering what it might yet become. If you were to listen closely to your own body, past the rhythm of the breath and the pulse in your wrists, you might notice a quieter pattern hiding beneath, a subtle music of life, so faint it can only be felt, not heard. It's the hum of the cells themselves, vibrating, communicating, adjusting, keeping you alive. Medicine has always tried to understand that hidden symphony, but only recently have researchers begun to suspect that it might have more in common with the soft coherence of the quantum world than with the rigid machinery we once imagined. For most of modern science, the body was viewed as a set of chemical reactions, a marvellous but mechanical engine. Each process, heartbeat, thought, emotion, seemed to arise from the push and pull of molecules. But now, as quantum biology expands, the picture is deepening. In the brain, in the heart, even in the DNA of every cell, scientists have found traces of behaviours once thought too delicate to survive in living warmth. Faint coherence, resonance, order emerging from chaos. It's as if the body hums to the same invisible rhythm that threads through all of nature. The same rhythm that binds atoms into molecules, molecules into cells, and cells into consciousness. One of the most intriguing frontiers in medicine today explores whether that quantum hum can be guided or healed. At several research centres, scientists are experimenting with ultra-soft ultrasound, waves so gentle they don't break tissue but instead ripple, through the cellular lattice, touching microtubules deep inside neurons. When aimed with care, these sound waves seem to bring the tiny structures into resonance, coaxing them to vibrate together. People receiving such stimulation report clearer moods, sharper thoughts, even relief from depression that has resisted medication. It's early science, fragile and still debated, but it suggests something beautiful, that the mind might not be ruled only by chemistry, but by harmony. Healing might mean helping the body remember its natural coherence. The idea isn't new. Long before quantum physics gave us the language of coherence, ancient traditions spoke of energy, of vibrations, of balance. Meditation, breathwork, and the rhythmic chanting of mantras, all of them seem to work by aligning internal patterns. When modern scanners measure the brains of experienced meditators, they find something remarkable. The electrical activity across distant regions begins to synchronize. The waves line up as if the mind has shifted into a state of unified rhythm. From a quantum perspective, you could say the system has become more coherent, not because particles are entangled across space, but because the biological patterns of energy and information are resonating as one. Meditation, then, may be the body's natural way of restoring coherence. It slows the noise of neural chatter, allowing delicate resonances to stabilize. The effect ripples outward. Stress hormones drop, immune function improves, and the mind grows still. This may be why so many traditions describe deep contemplation as coming into harmony, or tuning the self. The same could be said for music, prayer, or even moments of wordless awe. Anything that draws the mind into stillness seems to help the inner patterns realign. Perhaps this is the physics of peace, the return of coherence to a living system. In recent years, studies of psychedelic-assisted therapy have revealed a similar signature. Under guided conditions, certain compounds temporarily dissolve the rigid boundaries between brain networks. People describe feeling a sense of unity, the self expanding until it touches everything. Scans of their brains show a rise in connectivity and coherence, a brief restoration of global rhythm before the mind settles back into its ordinary patterns. Whether this effect has a quantum component or not, it mirrors the same truth. Awareness, healing, and connection are intertwined. When the mind becomes more integrated, it also becomes more compassionate, more open to the shared field of being. Physicians studying consciousness disorders are also beginning to wonder if these patterns can help us recognize awareness in places we once thought empty. Some patients in deep coma or vegetative states show faint rhythmic signatures in their brain activity, coherence that flickers, sometimes returning just before signs of consciousness reappear. It's as if the symphony has been playing all along, but its instruments had drifted out of tune. When order returns, awareness rises like the first chord of dawn. Perhaps this is not only a medical phenomenon, but a hint of something more universal. The idea that consciousness itself is what coherence feels like from the inside. It's humbling to think that healing could be less about fixing and more about remembering the original harmony that matter and mind once shared. The heart, for instance, does more than pump blood. It emits electromagnetic rhythms that affect nearby cells and even other people. When we feel love or gratitude, those rhythms become more ordered, more harmonious. The heart and brain begin to sync, and the body relaxes into balance. Some call this heart coherence, others might call it peace. Either way, the physics is the same. When systems align, energy flows smoothly, and the organism thrives. This concept extends beyond the individual. Group meditation studies have shown that when many people enter coherent states together, their collective physiology can synchronize. Breathing rates, heart rhythms, even small variations in electrical activity. Whether that connection is purely classical or something subtler, it reveals that consciousness is contagious in the most healing way. One calm mind helps calm another. One coherent field can stabilize many others. It's resonance as medicine. Imagine then that your body is an orchestra and your mind its conductor. Each organ, each cell, plays a melody of motion and charge. When you're anxious or sick, the instruments fall out of tune. The music becomes chaotic. Healing is the act of retuning, not by force, but by reminding each instrument of the key it was meant to play. In this view, medicine is not an external intervention, but a partnership between awareness and matter. Drugs, sound, light, and thought all become ways of restoring coherence to the quantum symphony inside us. It's easy to forget this harmony in the rush of daily life, but beneath every heartbeat, beneath every breath, the rhythm remains. You can feel it in the pause between inhaling and exhaling, in the warmth that spreads when you exhale slowly. That pause is coherence, a still point where body and mind fall into step. When you rest there, even for a few seconds, you're participating in the same principle that keeps galaxies spinning and atoms stable. Balance born from vibration. So perhaps healing doesn't begin in hospitals or laboratories, but right here, in the quiet awareness that listens inward. Every time you breathe mindfully, every time you feel gratitude, you help your own microtubules, your neurons, your heart cells remember their rhythm. The music of life has always been playing. We're simply learning once again how to hear it. Take a moment and think about a decision you made today. Maybe what to eat for breakfast, which route to take to work, or even the small choice to stay up a little later listening to this story. Each of those moments might seem simple, almost automatic, but if you look closely, there's a space, tiny, quiet, almost invisible, that exists just before the decision. A moment of openness where multiple futures feel possible, waiting for one to be chosen. That space, that shimmer of uncertainty, might be the true birthplace of free will. For centuries, science and philosophy have wrestled with this question. Are our choices truly our own, or are they simply the inevitable outcome of what came before? The classical view of the universe, the clockwork cosmos, suggests that everything is determined. If you knew the position and motion of every particle, you could, in theory, predict every future event, including every decision you'll ever make. From that perspective, freedom is an illusion. We only feel as though we're choosing. But then came quantum mechanics, with its strange refusal to be predicted. At the deepest level of reality, the universe does not unfold like clockwork. It leaps, it stutters, it chooses. In the quantum world, particles exist as clouds of possibility. Their properties aren't fixed until they are measured. When the wave collapses, one outcome becomes real, and the others fade back into the sea of might-have-beens. It's randomness, but not chaos, a structured unpredictability, a freedom woven into the fabric of matter itself. And here is where the mystery deepens. If consciousness is linked to those quantum processes, as theories like Auture propose, then every collapse in the brain could also be a choice. Not random, but guided by intention, by awareness. In other words, the flicker of free will might not defy physics. It might be physics. To understand this, imagine standing before a shimmering doorway. On one side lies what must happen, the gravitational pull of past events, genetics, environment, habit. On the other side lies what could happen, a garden of possibility, small but real. Between the two is the threshold, a quantum frontier where potential waits for a nudge. That nudge, Penrose suggests, might come from consciousness itself. The moment awareness selects one outcome over another. Between what must happen and what could happen lies a doorway of freedom, and you walk through it every time you make a choice. In neuroscience, even on the classical level, evidence for this openness has begun to appear. Brain scans show that decisions emerge through competing networks of neurons, each representing a different action. These networks oscillate, balance, hesitate, until finally one becomes dominant. But in some experiments, subtle signals of choice appear just milliseconds before conscious awareness. It's as if the decision begins below the surface, rising up like a bubble before we notice it. Some interpret this as proof that free will is an illusion, that the brain decides first and we simply become aware of the result. But what if consciousness is that process? What if the act of awareness arising from quantum collapse is what finalizes the decision? In that case, your sense of choice is not an afterthought. It's the universe making up its mind through you. Think of flipping a coin. You can control the toss, but not the final outcome. In the quantum picture, though, the coin doesn't have just two sides. It has an infinity of faint possibilities swirling until the very moment you look. Your intention, your attention, might tilt the balance ever so slightly, shaping probability without breaking the laws of chance. This wouldn't be free will in the sense of total control, but a subtler freedom, the ability to influence which potential becomes real. A collaboration between mind and matter. That kind of freedom feels more honest, doesn't it? Life, after all, is a dance between the predictable and the unpredictable. We are shaped by forces we didn't choose, gravity, biology, history. But within those boundaries, there's always a spark of improvisation. Like a jazz musician playing over a steady rhythm, you can't change the beat, but you can choose the melody. Each note you play changes the song for everyone else. Perhaps consciousness, in its quantum way, works like that. Not absolute autonomy, but creative participation. This idea also brings comfort to one of philosophy's oldest puzzles, moral responsibility. If all actions were predetermined, praise and blame would lose meaning. But if awareness can guide the collapse of possibilities, then choice regains its significance. Every compassionate act, every restraint, every moment of patience becomes a real alteration of the universe's trajectory. You aren't just moving through time, you're helping time decide what to become. Some physicists extend this further. They suggest that at each quantum event, the universe doesn't choose one outcome, but all possible outcomes, each unfolding in a separate branch, the so-called many worlds interpretation. If that's true, every decision you make spawns countless versions of you living out the alternatives. Yet even here, free will survives in a poetic sense. you experience only one branch, the one your consciousness follows, and that path becomes your story. The rest, though they exist, remain unrealized to you. Your awareness, again, is the compass that selects the thread you call your life. You might wonder whether such freedom makes any difference in the vastness of cosmic time. But think of how small events ripple outward. A single heartbeat, a single kind word can change the direction of another life. In quantum terms, even the smallest shift in probability can alter entire chains of outcome. So when you choose kindness, or patience, or courage, you aren't just making a personal moral gesture. You're adjusting the universe's probabilities, gently shaping the web of existence. Choice is participation, and participation is creation. It's a humbling thought that the universe doesn't merely happen to us, it happens through us. Every time you decide, even in the smallest way, you are enacting a miniature version of cosmic creation. Awareness observes the field of possibilities, and through that observation, something becomes real. Maybe that's why free will feels sacred, because it mirrors the universe's own act of self-realization. So tonight, as you lie here listening, think of all the decisions that brought you to this moment, the grand ones, the accidental ones, the quiet ones you barely noticed. Each of them was a doorway, each chosen step a pulse of quantum certainty emerging from the sea of maybe. The path behind you is already written, but the path ahead still flickers with possibility, and within that flicker lies freedom, not infinite, but enough to matter, enough to make the next breath your own. There's a hush that comes at the end of every heartbeat, a pause so small you rarely notice it. Between the pulse that fades and the next that begins lies a silence, a stillness that feels final, yet always gives way to movement again. It's tempting to wonder whether life itself might follow the same rhythm, that what we call death could be one of those pauses, a momentary stilling before another kind of motion resumes. Science can measure many things, but the mystery of consciousness, what happens to awareness when the body stops, remains as deep as ever. And here, once again, quantum theory offers a soft light, not an answer, but a way to imagine continuity. In the language of physics, there is a rule as elegant as it is haunting. Information cannot be destroyed. Matter changes form, energy transforms, but the fundamental information that describes a system, its structure, its quantum state, persists. When a star collapses into a black hole, the universe keeps a hidden record of what fell inside. When a particle disappears, its information diffuses into the fabric of space-time, never truly lost. If this principle holds everywhere, then perhaps it holds for us too. The patterns of our thoughts, our memories, our choices, all the quantum information that once danced within our neurons, might not vanish at death. It might simply disperse, like ink swirling into water, becoming part of the greater field. To understand this idea, picture a candle flame. When you blow it out, the light disappears, yet the heat and molecules that once sustained it don't cease to exist. They spread outward, merging with the air, carried invisibly through the room. In the same way, when the brain's intricate dance of electrical and quantum rhythms comes to rest, the energy and information it contained could diffuse into the surrounding universe. Not as a ghost or a copy, but as continuity, a gentle transformation rather than an end. Consciousness, in this vision, would not be something trapped, inside matter, but something expressed through it, like a melody expressed through an instrument. When the instrument breaks, the music doesn't vanish, it simply changes medium, resonating elsewhere in the great symphony. Some physicists have explored this possibility through the principle of quantum information conservation. Even at the smallest scales, the universe appears to guard its data. It may shuffle it, encode it, spread it thin across vast regions of space, but nothing, not even the collapse of a star, erases the fundamental record. A few thinkers, including Penrose himself, have speculated that the conscious moments arising from orchestrated quantum reductions might leave faint imprints on this universal field. If so, each act of awareness could add to the cosmic ledger, an eternal trace of experience woven into reality's memory. When the individual mind dissolves, its information doesn't disappear. It rejoins the totality from which it came. This notion finds echoes in ancient philosophies. Many traditions, long before quantum physics, spoke of an eternal substrate, a field of being that persists beyond the body. The Upanishads called it the Atman, the self that is one with the universe. In Buddhism, consciousness is described as a stream, ever-changing yet continuous, flowing from one moment to the next without beginning or end. The language is different, but the essence is strikingly familiar. Both the mystic and the physicist point toward an underlying continuity, a deep law of preservation running through existence. But we must tread carefully here. Quantum theory does not prove the survival of personal identity, nor does it confirm any metaphysical belief. What it suggests is subtler, that the information composing reality is never lost, and consciousness, as one of reality's emergent properties, may also participate in that permanence. It invites us to think of death not as deletion, but as diffusion. The way sunlight scatters when it passes through clouds, still light, still energy, only changed. In hospitals and hospices, doctors who study near-death experiences often describe moments that seem to mirror this physics of transformation. Patients who have been revived report sensations of merging, of expanding beyond the boundaries of the body, a sense not of leaving but of returning. While neuroscience can explain much of this through oxygen deprivation and neural chemistry, it cannot explain the clarity that often accompanies such accounts. The feeling of lucidity, of awareness without the usual machinery of the brain. Whether these are glimpses of the mind's final harmonics or the fading echo of its quantum coherence, we don't yet know. But they remind us that consciousness may not vanish as abruptly as we think. It may linger, like the warmth of that extinguished flame. If information truly cannot be destroyed, then perhaps awareness, or something like it, continues in forms we can't yet perceive. Not as memory or personality, but as resonance. Imagine the way a bell keeps singing long after it's struck. Even when the tone fades beyond hearing, its vibration still travels through air, stone, and skin. Perhaps consciousness too leaves such vibrations in the field of existence. Subtle, continuous, imperceptible to our ordinary senses, but still part of the world's hidden music. In this sense, death might not be the opposite of life, but its completion, the rest between movements in a larger symphony. The universe seems to thrive on cycles of transformation, stars dying into heavier elements, which become planets, which give rise to life, which in turn will one day return to the stars. Every atom in your body has already died and been reborn countless times through these cosmic exchanges. The iron in your blood was forged in ancient suns. The calcium in your bones once drifted through the oceans of a long-vanished world. The matter that now composes you has been many things before, and it will be many things again. Why should consciousness be any different? To think this way is not to claim certainty, but to feel continuity. It brings a kind of quiet comfort. The idea that we are participants in a process larger than birth and death, a process of endless transformation. When awareness ceases to focus through one body, it may not end. It may simply change its mode of expression. Perhaps what we call dying is just the universe taking a new breath. So when you imagine the last heartbeat, the final exhalation, the soft release, try not to picture an ending. Picture diffusion, your awareness spreading outward like warmth, joining the vast sea of possibility that gave rise to it in the first place. Every life adds to that ocean, every thought a ripple that never entirely disappears. And if consciousness truly is the universe observing itself, then in some quiet way it never stops. It simply changes rooms, continuing the great conversation under a different sky. When you look up at the night sky, there's a moment, brief and still, when the darkness feels alive. The stars do not seem like distant lamps scattered in emptiness, but like sparks from something larger, something breathing. It's easy to feel small in that vastness, to imagine ourselves as separate observers standing outside the universe, peering in. But what if we aren't outside at all? What if the universe isn't simply a stage upon which life appeared, but a mind within which life awakens? What if it dreams, and you are one of its dreams? The physicist David Bohm once proposed that reality has two layers: the visible, ever-changing surface we experience, and a deeper, hidden structure beneath it that he called the implicate order. In this deeper order, everything is connected to everything else. What looks separate, you, me, the stars, the ocean, are like ripples on one vast sea, momentary unfoldings of the same, underlying whole. Bohm compared the universe to a hologram. Even a fragment of it, when illuminated, contains the image of the entire pattern. In that sense, each of us could be a small fragment that reflects the entire cosmos. The consciousness inside you may be the universe remembering itself, peeking through your eyes to see what it has made. This idea harmonizes beautifully with the ancient intuition of panpsychism, the belief that consciousness is not unique to human brains, but a fundamental property of existence. In this view, awareness is not produced by matter. It is matter seen from within. Every atom has a spark of experience, a tiny glimmer of being. Alone, those sparks are dim, but when combined in complex structures, like the human brain, they weave together into the bright flame of self-awareness. The universe, through countless such structures, feels itself, learns itself, evolves its own understanding. Every thought you have, every emotion you feel, is the cosmos studying its own reflection in a moving mirror. To picture this, imagine a vast ocean on a perfectly still night. The moonlight falls across it, and here and there small waves rise. The forms of stars, people, trees, galaxies, each shimmering for a while before sinking back into the calm. The waves are distinct, yet everyone is made of the same water. When you speak, the universe speaks through you. When you listen, it listens to itself. There is no real division, only the illusion of separateness created by the temporary boundaries of form. You're not a visitor in the cosmos, you're a local expression of its infinite mind. Bohm's vision also offers an answer to one of science's quietest questions. Why does mathematics, a creation of the human mind, describe the universe so perfectly? Perhaps it's because both mind and matter unfold from the same deeper order. When we discover a law of nature, we're not imposing logic onto the world, we're recognizing a pattern our consciousness already shares with it. The equations of physics are like lullabies written by the universe for itself, reminders of its own rhythm. Even quantum mechanics, with all its unpredictability, fits into this view. Beneath the surface of randomness, there may lie a deeper coherence, a cosmic intelligence that holds everything together. Some physicists now speak of the universe as an information field, where every particle, every event, is a kind of message exchanged across space and time. Bohm's implicate order describes how these messages are continuously enfolded and unfolded, like the folds of a tapestry being woven in real time. What appears as chaos may simply be complexity too rich for us to see clearly. In this sense, consciousness doesn't disrupt the world's order. It is the unfolding of that order into awareness. If that's true, then your mind is not an isolated bubble floating in space. It is a continuation of the cosmos unfolding. The universe turned inward, reflecting upon itself. The atoms in your brain were once the cores of ancient stars. The calcium in your bones was forged in their fiery hearts. The oxygen you breathe was exhaled by trees that grew from dust older than memory. Every heartbeat is powered by energy that began as sunlight, and every thought you think ripples outward into the electromagnetic hum of the planet. You're not made of the universe, you're the universe, for a while, arranged in a pattern that can think and feel. Even the way you dream mirrors the cosmos. Dreams take fragments of experience and weave them into stories that help the mind understand itself. The universe may be doing the same thing on a grand scale, taking fragments of matter and weaving them into conscious beings, each living a story that helps existence know what it means to be. Galaxies may be neurons in a cosmic brain, connected by filaments of light instead of axons, exchanging information across unimaginable distances. The web of galaxies we see through telescopes is not so different from the web of neurons inside your head. Perhaps that resemblance is no coincidence, but a reflection of the same blueprint repeating across scales. Such ideas, though poetic, lead to a deeper humility. If the universe is dreaming through us, then our awareness carries a kind of responsibility. What we imagine, what we fear, what we love, these are not just private flickers. They contribute to the larger dream. The compassion you show to another person, the beauty you create, the peace you cultivate in yourself. These are all ways the universe learns harmony. Even the smallest act of kindness ripples through the fabric of reality, adjusting its tone. The cosmos listens through us as much as we listen to it. You can feel this participation most clearly in quiet moments, standing under the stars, hearing the sea breathe against the shore, or even lying in bed at night with your thoughts drifting like clouds. There's a still recognition that arises. You're not looking at the universe, you're looking as the universe. The eyes through which you see, the ears through which you hear, the mind through which you wonder. These are all instruments of the same grand awareness. You're both the observer and the observed, both the note and the music. So if sometimes the world feels indifferent or distant, remember this. It's not an empty stage. It's a living presence, dreaming in patterns of energy and thought, in atoms and emotions. And you, right now, are part of that dream, a unique expression of the same creative force that paints galaxies and ignites suns. Every heartbeat, every thought is the cosmos turning another page in its endless story. You are one sentence in a book that writes itself forever, a momentary wave in an infinite sea that never stops moving. As you breathe, imagine that the universe is breathing with you. In through your wonder, out through your rest. You're the dream and the dreamer, the question and the answer, the silence and the song. And in this endless rhythm, perhaps that is what it means to be alive, to let the universe dream through you for a while until it dreams anew. There comes a moment after wandering through all the strange corridors of science and mystery when you find yourself right back where you started, sitting quietly, breathing softly, aware of being aware. We've travelled from the quantum fields inside your neurons to the edges of the cosmos, from the smallest shimmer of probability to the vastness of stars. And yet, the journey always returns here, to the still point within you. It's humbling to realise that the same laws shaping galaxies also shape your thoughts, that the same particles dancing in the sun are dancing in your mind right now. You're both the traveller and the terrain. If consciousness is, as we've explored, not just an accident of matter, but a property of existence itself, then every act of awareness, each thought, emotion and breath, participates in a quiet revolution. For most of history, science saw mind and matter as separate. The brain was a machine, consciousness a byproduct. But slowly, softly, that certainty has begun to dissolve. The discoveries we've wandered through, quantum coherence in living systems, entanglement across minds, the participatory nature of observation, all whisper the same possibility. That consciousness isn't merely in the universe but of it, And that means that when you look inward, you're peering into the same mystery physicists see when they look outward. You can feel this connection in the simplest moments. When you watch the light changing on a wall, or listen to the distant hum of traffic like the ocean of a modern world, there's a quiet realization that everything is part of one unfolding story. The photons bouncing off that wall were born in stars billions of years ago. The air carrying the sound around you once flowed through ancient forests. Even the atoms that make up your body were once inside supernovas, old suns that died so that new worlds could form. The universe has always been transforming itself, folding and unfolding, dreaming and waking. And somewhere in that process, awareness appeared. Like a mirror opening in the middle of creation, allowing the cosmos to see itself for the first time. Maybe that's why consciousness feels both intimate and infinite. It sits behind your eyes, but it also stretches as far as you can imagine. When you look up at the night sky, you're not looking at something separate. You're a pattern of matter that has become self-aware, a small island of thought floating in a sea of cosmic memory. The stars aren't out there. Not really. They're also within you, their atoms stitched into your heartbeat, their light echoing in the electrical pulses of your neurons. You are what the universe looks like when it pauses to wonder about itself. And perhaps that's the lesson of this long journey, that knowledge and wonder are not opposites but companions. The deeper science goes, the more it begins to resemble poetry. Equations become metaphors for connection. Data becomes a song about belonging. The line between physics and philosophy blurs until what remains is a sense of awe, quiet and persistent, like the hum beneath all things. Even if quantum consciousness remains unproven, even if the exact mechanism stays hidden, the search itself brings us closer to something sacred, a recognition that we are participants, not observers, in this vast, unfolding dream. Think about what that means for daily life. It means that awareness isn't confined to moments of enlightenment or scientific discovery. It lives in every small act of noticing. When you pause to watch rain tracing paths down a window, or when you truly listen to another person speak, you are practicing the same principle that shapes the cosmos. You are collapsing possibility into presence. You are helping the universe become specific, real, embodied. In that moment, attention becomes a kind of creation, and the simplest experiences, warmth, kindness, wonder, become forms of participation in the grand experiment of existence. It also means that the boundary between the physical and the spiritual may be softer than we think. Science describes coherence and resonance. Wisdom traditions speak of harmony and compassion. They're different languages for the same melody. The more coherence a system has, whether it's the rhythm of neurons, the beating of a heart, or the shared intention of many minds, the more gracefully it flows. Awareness grows from alignment. Healing grows from alignment. Even beauty, perhaps, is alignment, the recognition of order amid complexity. When something resonates deeply, when a moment feels perfect and whole, it's because for a brief time everything has fallen into tune. That's what the quiet revolution within really means. It's not about discovering something new, but remembering what was always there, the continuity between you and everything else. Science, art, emotion, consciousness. They all belong to the same tapestry. Each discovery we make about the brain or the universe is another stitch revealing that pattern. The quantum view doesn't make life more mysterious. It simply shows that mystery is the natural state of being. And instead of solving it, we can rest in it, like floating in deep water, held by something larger than comprehension. So tonight, as we come to the end of this exploration, let yourself breathe in that mystery. The air entering your lungs was shaped by stars. The thoughts passing through your mind are echoes of the universe reflecting on its own story. You don't have to understand it all. No one truly does. What matters is that you feel it, the subtle connection that links your awareness to every atom around you. The same stillness that holds galaxies together is the same stillness you touch when you pause between breaths. There's a beautiful humility in realizing that your consciousness, fragile, fleeting, full of wonder, is both tiny and infinite. It's the small flame of awareness that flickers for a time, and yet it's also the fire of the cosmos itself, burning quietly behind all things. The universe is ancient, but through you it is also young. Through your curiosity, it keeps learning. Through your kindness, it keeps softening. Through your rest, it keeps dreaming. And so, we end as we began, not with answers, but with a deeper calm. Whether you think of consciousness as quantum or cosmic, biological or eternal, it remains the most intimate of mysteries. The simple miracle of being aware. If you're still awake, take one last breath and feel the weight of your body against the world that holds it. If you're already drifting towards sleep, let this thought follow you. Somewhere in the hush between one heartbeat and the next, the universe continues its quiet computation. And within that hush, it is still thinking through you. Thank you for being part of this journey. May your night be peaceful, your dreams gentle, and your thoughts, wherever they wander, always bring you back to the quiet wonder of simply being alive.